to keep reading. I have read a little bit between the last live we had. And so I'll do a quick recap of what I have read in the meantime. I believe we last ended at, oh gosh, I don't remember. So I'm going to fill in all of the gaps of what I read so far. So, we have, the games have actually started by this point in time. They found Marcus, but I think it was like a secret thing, and then they tortured him, but he was barely clinging to life, and then they hung him from manacles at the end of the arena to start the game. And Lamina, the District 7 Lumber District tribute female, she, like, just hacked away at his neck, and killed him, garnering her some support. And then, what else happened? Oh, Sejanus, like, got pissed off by that. So he ran away. And what else happened? Oh, nothing really else has happened, but Dill, I think from District 4, the female tribute, she died of tuberculosis complication. And her tribute was Reaper, or is Reaper. Her other district partner, whatever, is Reaper. And he is, like, buff. And so he's kind of scary. He's been kind of on the prowl. Yeah. And that's been pretty much everything that's gone on. Nothing too much has happened during the games. But we just learned that Sejanus, when he disappeared, ran to the arena and is now inside. So, that's where we're starting. The moment Ma said it, Coriolanus knew she was right. Perhaps only a mother would make the connection in that gloom, but with her prompting, he recognized Sejanus. Something about the posture, the light stoop, the slight... Alright, we're off to a great start. The slight stoop, the line of the forehead. The white academy uniform shirt glowed faintly in the dark, and he could almost make out the bright yellow mentor badge, still hanging by the lanyard on his chest. How Sejanus had gotten into the arena, he had no idea. A capital boy, a mentor no less, might have drawn too much attention at the entrance. I need to lock in. These commas are throwing me. Might have drawn too much attention at the entrance, where you could buy fried dough and pink lemonade, where you could join the crowd watching the games on the screen. Had he merely blended in, or even used his minor celebrity to set suspicions at bay? My tribute's finished, so I may as well enjoy myself. Posed for pictures, chatted up the peacekeepers, and slipped in somehow while their backs were turned? Who would think he'd want to enter the arena, and why on earth had he? On screen, a shadowy Sejanus knelt, set down a parcel, and rolled Marcus onto his back. He did his best to straighten the legs, to fold the arms on the chest, but the limbs had grown stiff and defied arrangement. Coriolanus couldn't tell what was happening next. Something with the parcel, but then Sejanus rose to his feet, and he held his hand over the body. That's what he did at the zoo, thought Coriolanus. He remembered when, after Arachne's death, he'd caught a glimpse of Sejanus sprinkling something over the dead tribute's body. "That's your son in there, what's he doing?" said the Grand Man aghast. "He's putting breadcrumbs on the body," said Ma. "So Marcus has food on his journey." "His journey where?" said the Grand Man. "He's dead." "Back to wherever he came from," said Ma. "It's what we do back home when someone dies." Coriolanus couldn't help feeling embarrassed for her. If you ever needed proof of the district's backwardness, there you had it. Primitive people with their primitive customs. How much bread had they wasted with this nonsense? Wow, Snow is bitching about this. Holy shit, that's brute. How much bread had they wasted? It's a formality for the dead. Just let them have it. Oh no, he's starved to death. Somebody get the bread. He had a sinking feeling that his supposed friendship was going to come back to haunt him. As if on cue, the phone rang. "Is the whole city up?" wondered the Grand Man. "Excuse me." Coriolanus crossed to the phone in the foyer. "Hello?" He said into the receiver, hoping it was a wrong number. "Mr. Snow, it's Dr. Gall." Coriolanus felt his insides contract. Are you near a screen? Just got home, actually, he answered, trying to buy time. Oh, yes, there it is. My family's watching. What's going on with your friend? She asked. Coriolanus turned his head away from the gathering and lowered his voice. He's not really that. Nonsense. You've been thick as thieves, she said. Help me give away my sandwiches, Coriolanus. Empty seat next to me, Sejanus. When I asked Casca what classmates he was close to, yours was the only name he could think of. His civility to Sejanus had obviously been misread. Really, there were hardly more than acquaintances. Dr. Gall, if you'd let me explain. I don't have time for explanations. Right now, the plinth brat's loose in the arena with a pack of wolves. If they see him, they'll kill him on the spot. She turned to speak to someone else. No, don't cut away abruptly. That'll only draw attention. Just make it as dark as you can. Make it look natural. Slow blackout, as if the clouds had drifted over the moon. She was back in the next breath. You're a smart boy. What message will that send to the audience? The damage will be considerable. We must remedy the situation at once. You could send in some peacekeepers, Coriolanus said. And have him bolt like a rabbit? She scoffed. Imagine that for a moment. The peacekeepers trying to trace down in the dark? No, we'll have to lure him out, as uneventfully as possible, so we'll need people he cares about. He can't stand his father. No siblings, no other friends. That leaves you and his mother. We're trying to locate her now. Oof, this is not gonna go well. Coriolanus is in deep shit. Coriolanus felt his heart sink. She's right here, he admitted. So much for his acquaintance's defense. Well, done and done. I want you both here at the arena in 20 minutes. More, and it will be me serving you with demerit, not a high bottom. And you can kiss any chance of that prize goodbye. With that, she hung up. Oh my gosh. We thought snow was bad in the main books, but this is pretty atrocious. On his television, Coriolanus could see that the image had darkened. He could barely make out Sejanus's figure at all now. Mrs. Plinth, that was the head game maker. She'd like you to meet her at the arena to collect Sejanus, and I'm to accompany you. He could hardly admit to more without giving the grandma'am a heart attack. Is he in trouble? She asked, wide-eyed. With a capital? Coriolanus found it strange that she'd be worried about the capital. She'd be more worried about the capital than an arena full of armed tributes at this point. But maybe she had a reason after what happened to Marcus. Oh no, they're just concerned with his well-being. Shouldn't be long, but don't wait up, he told Tigers and the Grandman. As fast as he could, short of carrying her, he moved Mrs. Plinth out the door. I always yawn, Maureen. He moved Mrs. Plinth out the door, down the elevator, and through the lobby. Her car rolled up soundlessly, and the driver, most likely an Avox, only nodded at his request to be taken to the arena. We're rather in a hurry, Coriolanus told the driver, and the car sped up immediately, gliding through the empty streets. If it was possible to cover the distance in 20 minutes, they would. Mrs. Plinth clutched her handbag and stared out the window at the deserted city. First time I saw the capital, it was night, like this. Oh yes, said Coriolanus, only to be polite. Honestly, who cared? Oh my gosh. Who cared? Oh my gosh. He is actually psychopathic. Like, he has no emotion besides what his love for Lucy Gray, and that I just feel like that's not going to end well. So he's going to lose that, and then he's never going to love anybody again. He thinks that's impossible. So then we're going to get a cold-hearted Snow that we know. The more cold-hearted. He's already cold-hearted here. Jeez. Excuse me. Honestly, who cared? His entire future was on the line because of her wayward son, and one had to question the parenting of a boy who thought breaking into the arena would solve anything. Sejanus sat right where you are, saying, it'll be all right, Ma, it'll be okay, trying to calm me down, when we both knew it was a disaster, said Mrs. Plinth. But he was so brave, so good, only think of his Ma. Must have been a big change. What was it with the Plinths anyway? To be constantly turning advantage to tragedy. You need only to take a cursory glance at the interior of this car, the tooled leather, the upholstered seats, the bar with the crystal bottles of gem-colored liquids, to know they were among the most fortunate people I've had. Stop fucking... Ah! That's gonna be my bit now, screaming while yawning. Family and friends cut us off, Mrs. Plinth went on. No new friends to be made here. Strabo, his pa, that is, still thinks it was the right thing to do. No kind of future in, too. His way of protecting us. His way of keeping Sejanus from the games. Ironic, really, given the circumstances. Coriolanus tried to redirect her. Now, I don't know what Dr. Gall had in mind, but I imagine she wants you keep your help getting him out of there. I don't know if I can, she said. I'm so upset and all. I can try, but I'll have to think it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do. Coriolanus realized that this was what had always defiled Sejanus' actions, his determination to do the right thing. That insistence, the way, for instance, he would defy Dr. Gall when the rest of them were just trying to get by, was another reason he alienated people. Frankly, he could be insufferable with those superior little comments of his, but playing on that might be the way to manipulate him. Oh my gosh, we're already manipulating people. As the car pulled up to the entrance of the arena, Coriolanus saw an effort had been made to conceal the crisis. Only a dozen or so peacekeepers were present, and a handful of game makers. I suppressed it. The refreshment booths had shut down. The day's crowds had dispersed earlier, so there was little to draw curious spectators. Stepping out, he noticed how quickly the temperature had dropped since his walk home. In the back of the van, a Capitol News monitor displayed a split screen of the actual feed of the arena next to the darkened version going out to the public. Dr. Gall, Dean Highbottom, and a few peacekeepers were gathered around it. As Coriolanus walked up with Mrs. Plinth, he made out Sejanus kneeling next to Marcus's body, still as a statue. At least you're punctual, said Dr. Gall. Mrs. Plinth, I presume? Yes, said Mrs. Plinth, a quaver in her voice. I'm sorry if Sejanus has caused any inconvenience. He's a good boy, really. It's just he takes things so to heart. No one could accuse him of being indifferent, Dr. Gall agreed. She turned to Coriolanus. Any idea how we might rescue your best friend, Mr. Snow? Coriolanus had ignored the barb and examined the screen. What's he doing? Just kneeling there, looks like. Sorry, I'm trying to do voices for all these people, but just kneeling there, looks like, said Dean Highbottom, possibly in some kind of shock. He appears calm. Perhaps you could send the peacekeepers in without startling him, suggested Coriolanus. Too risky, said Dr. Gall. What about putting his mother on the speaker, or bullhorn? Coriolanus continued. If you can darken the screen, surely you can manipulate the audio as well. On the broadcast, but in the arena we'd alert every tribute to the fact that there's an unarmed capital boy in their midst, said Dean Highbottom. Coriolanus began to get a bad feeling. What do you propose? We think that's why I skipped a word. We think someone he knows needs to slip in as unobtrusively as possible and coax him out, said Dr. Gall. Namely, you. Oh no, burst out Mrs. Plinth with surprising sharpness. It can't be Coriolanus. The last thing we need is to put another child in danger. I'll do it. Coriolanus appreciated the offer, but knew the chances of this were slim. With her red, swollen eyes and wobbly high heels, she did not inspire confidence as a covert operator. What we need is someone who can make a run for it, if necessary. Mr. Snow is the man for the job. Dr. Gall gestured to some peacekeepers, and Coriolanus found himself being suited up in body armor for the arena. This vest should protect your vital organs. Here's your pepper spray and a flash unit that will temporarily blind your enemies, should you make any. He looked at the small bottle of pepper spray and the flash unit. What about a gun, or at least a knife? Since you're not trained, this seems safer. Remember, you're not in there to do damage. You're in there to bring your friend out as quickly and quietly as possible, instructed Dr. Gall. Another student, or even the Coriolanus of a couple weeks ago, would have protested the situation, insisted on calling a parent or guardian, pleaded. Okay. But after the snake attack on Clementia, the aftermath of the bombing and Marcus's torture, he knew it would be pointless. If Dr. Gall decided he was to go into the Capitol arena, that's where he would go. Even if his prize was not at stake, he was just like the subjects of her other experiments, students or tributes, of no more consequence than the Avoxes in the cages, powerless to object. You can't do this. He's just a boy. Let me call my husband, begged Mrs. Plinth. Dean Highbottom gave Coriolanus a little smile. He'll be all right. It takes a lot to kill Snow. Had this whole idea been the Dean's? Had he seen a neat shortcut to his ultimate goal of destroying Coriolanus' future? At any rate, he seemed deaf to Ma's entreaties. With peacekeepers at either elbow, for his safety or to prevent him from bolting, he crossed the arena He had little recollection of being carried out after the bombing. Perhaps they had gone out another exit. He now could see the significant damage to the main entrance. One of the two great doors had been entirely blown away, leaving a wide hole framed with twisted metal. Beside the guard, little had been done to secure this area. Holy! I can't keep yawning like this. It's actually it's infecting me. Anyway. So leaving a wide hole frame with twisted metal. Besides the guard, little had been done to secure this area, other than placing a few rows of waist-high concrete barriers across the opening. So Janice wouldn't have had much trouble getting past those if he'd been a decent distraction. And there had been the bustle of the carnival most of the day. If the peacekeepers had been concerned about rebel activity, they would have focused on someone targeting a crowd. Still, it seemed a little too relaxed. What if the tributes tried to make a break for it again? Coriolanus and his escort wove their way through the barriers and into the lobby, which had taken multiple hits. The few unbroken electric bulbs around the admission and concessions booth showed a layer of plaster dust coating chunks of ceiling and floor, toppled pillars and fallen beams. To reach the turnstiles required navigating the debris, and again he could see how Sejanus might have crossed it undetected, with a little patience and a bit of luck. The turnstiles on the far right side had been targeted, leaving gnarled, melted metal shards and open access. Here, the peacekeepers had built the first real fortification, installing a temporary set of bars encased in barbed wire, and a half-dozen armed guards. The undamaged turnstiles were still an effective blockade, as they did not allow re-entry. So, he had a token, asked Coriolanus. He had a token, confirmed an old peacekeeper who seemed to be in command. Caught us off guard. We're not really looking for people breaking into the arena during the games. Only out. He produced a token from his pocket. This one's for you. Coriolanus turned the disc in his fingers, but it made no move to the turnstiles. How do you think he'd get out? I don't think he did, said the peacekeeper. And how will I get out? Asked Coriolanus. This plan seemed dicey at best. There. The peacekeeper pointed to the bars. We can pull back the barbed wire and tilt the bars forward, creating an opening big enough for you to crawl under. You can do that quickly, he said doubtfully. We've got you on camera. We'll start moving the bars when you're successfully bringing him out, the peacekeeper assured him. If I can't convince him to come, Coriolanus asked. We have no instructions on that, the peacekeeper shrugged. I guess you stay until the mission is accomplished. A cold sweat bathed Coriolanus' body as the words registered. He would not be allowed back out without Sejanus. He looked through the turnstiles at the end of the passage, where the barricade had been erected under the scoreboard, the one he'd seen Lamina, Cirque, and Tesley scampering in and out of earlier in the games. What about that? That's for show, really. Blocks the view of the lobby and of the street. Can't put that on camera, the peacekeeper explained, but you won't have trouble getting through it. Then neither would the tributes, Coriolanus thought. He ran his thumb over the slick surface of the token. We've got you covered up to the barricade, said the peacekeeper said. So you'll kill any tribute to attack me, Coriolanus clarified. Scare him off, anyway, said the peacekeeper. Don't worry, we've got your back. Excellent, said Coriolanus, not convinced at all. He steeled himself and jammed the token in the slot, then pushed the metal arms. Enjoy the show, the turnstile reminded him. That was weird. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. Y'all, I could be a voice actor. I just said that in 8 different ways. Enjoy the show. Anyway, enjoy the show, the turnstile reminded him, sounding 10 times louder in the stillness of the night. One of the peacekeepers chuckled. Coriolanus made for the wall on the right and walked forward as swiftly and silently as he could. The red emergency lights, his only illumination, suffused the passage with a soft, bloody glow. He pressed his lips tightly together, controlling his breathing through his nose. Right, left, Nothing. No one stirred. Perhaps, as Lucky had suggested, the tributes had all bedded down for the night. He paused for a moment at the barricade, just as the peacekeeper had said. It was a sham. Flimsy layers of barbed wire mounted on frames, rickety wooden structures, and concrete slabs arranged to block the view, not imprison the tributes. Probably hadn't been enough time for a real one, or perhaps it had been deemed unnecessary with the bars and the peacekeepers behind him. As it was, he had only to wind his way through the backdrop to find himself at the edge of the field. He hesitated behind the final stretch of barbed wire, surveying the scene. The moon had risen high in the sky, and in the pale, silvery light he could make out the figure of Sejanus. Back toward him, still kneeling over Marcus's body. Lamina hadn't stirred. Other than that, the immediate area seemed deserted. Was it, though? The wreckage from the bombings provided ample hiding spot places. The other tributes could be concealed a few yards away, and he'd never know. In the chilly air, his sweat-soaked shirt felt clammy against his skin, and he wished for his jacket. He thought of Lucy Gray in her sleeveless dress. Had she curled up against Jessup for warmth? The image didn't sit well with him, so he pushed it away. He could not think of her now, only the present danger, and Sejanus, and how to get him out to the other side of that turnstile. Coriolanus took a deep breath and stepped out onto the field. He padded across the dirt, channeling the circus wildcats he had seen here as a boy. Fearless and powerful and silent. He knew he must not spook Sejanus, but he needed to get close enough to converse. When he was 10 feet behind him, he stopped and spoke in a hushed voice. Sejanus, it's me. Sejanus stiffened, then his shoulders began to shake. At first, Coriolanus took it for sobbing, but it was quite the opposite. You really can't stop rescuing me, can you? Coriolanus joined in the laughter under his... Oh. You really can't stop rescuing me, can you? Coriolanus joined in the laughter under his breath. Can't do it. They sent you in to fish me out. What madness. Sejanus' laughter trailed off, and he rose to his feet. Did you ever see a dead body? A lot, during the war. He took it as an invitation to join Sejanus and closed in. There. He could grab his arm now. But what then? It was unlikely he could drag him from the arena. He shoved his hands into his pocket instead. I haven't so much. Not this close. At funerals, like yes, and at the zoo the other night. Only the girls hadn't been dead long enough to stiffen up, said Sejanus. I don't know if I'd rather be burned or buried. Not that it really matters. Well, you don't have to decide now. Coriolanus' eyes swept the field. Was that a person in the shadows behind the broken wall? Oh, it won't be up to me, said Sejanus. I don't know what's taking the tribute so long to find me. I must have been in here a while. He looked at Coriolanus for the first time, and his brow wrinkled in concern. You should go, you know. I'd like to, Coriolanus said carefully. I really would. Only, there's the matter of your ma. She's waiting out front, pretty upset. I promised I'd bring you to her. Sejanus' expression turned indescribably sad. Poor Ma. Poor old Ma. She never wanted any of this, you know. Not the money, not the move, not the fancy clothes or the driver. She just wanted to stay in too. But my father, Betty isn't here, is he? No, I'll keep his distance until this is settled. Then let the buying begin. Buying what? The breeze ruffled Coriolanus' hair and made hollow, echoing sounds in the arena. This was taking too long, and Sejanus was making no effort to speak softly. Buying everything. He bought our way here, bought my schooling, bought my mentorship, and he goes nuts because he can't buy me, said Sejanus. He'll buy you if you let him, or at least compensate you for trying to help me. Buy away, thought Coriolanus, thinking of next year's tuition. He only said, You're my friend. He doesn't need to pay me to help you. Sejanus laid a hand on his shoulder. You're the only reason I've lasted this long, Coriolanus. I need to stop causing you trouble. I didn't realize how bad this was for you. I should have traded tributes when you asked, he answered. Sejanus sighed. It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing does, really. Of course it matters, Coriolanus insisted. They were coming now. He could feel it. The sense of a pack closing in on him. Come out with me. There's no point, said Sejanus. There's nothing left to do but die. Coriolanus pressed him. That's it? That's your only choice? It's the only way I might possibly make a statement. Let the world see me die in protest, Sejanus concluded. Even if I'm not truly capital, I'm not district either, like Lucy Gray, but without the talent. Do you really think they'll show this? They'll quietly remove your body and say you died of the flu. Coriolanus stopped, wondering if he said too much, if it pointed too directly at Clementia's fate. But it wasn't as if Dr. Gull and Dean Highbottom could hear him. They've all but blackened out the screen now. Sejanus' face clouded over. They won't show it? Not in a million years. You'll be dead for nothing, and you'll have wasted your chance to make things better. A cough. Small but muffled, but definitely a cough. coming from the stands to his right. Coriolanus had not imagined it. What chance, said Sejanus. You've money. Maybe not now, but one day you'll have a fortune. Money has a lot of uses. Look how it changed your world. Maybe you can make changes too, good ones. Maybe if you don't, a lot more people will suffer. Coriolanus's right hand tightened around his pepper spray, then flitted to his flash unit. Which would actually help if he attacked? What makes you think I could do that? Said Sejanus. You're the only one who had the guts to stand up to Dr. Gall, said Coriolanus. He hated giving that to him, but it was true. He was the sole member of the class who defiled her. Okay, before I continue reading, I would like to think that they both happen to make it out, and it's a good ending, but based on what's happened in this book so far, Susan Collins is not afraid of killing people. And so I think we know Coriolanus is going to stay alive because this is a prequel. Unless there's another Coriolanus Snow. But I think Sejanus is going to die. That's what I'm going to land on. Or there's going to be some messing out, like with the tributes, and it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be crazy. So, thank you. Sejanus sounded tired, but a bit saner. Thank you for that. Coriolanus put his free hand on Sejanus' arm, as if comforting him, but really to grip his shirt if he decided to run. We're being surrounded. I'm going. Come with me. He could see Sejanus starting to cave. Please, what do you want to do? Fight the tributes or fight for them? Don't give Dr. Gall the satisfaction of beating you. Don't give up. Sejanus stared down at Marcus for a moment, weighing his options. You're right, he finally said. If I believe what I say, it's my responsibility to take her down, to end this whole atrocity somehow. He lifted his head, as if suddenly realizing his situation. His eyes turned to the stands, where Coriolanus had heard the cough. But I won't leave Marcus. Coriolanus made a snap judgment. I'll get his feet. The legs were stiff and heavy, reeking of blood and filth, but he crooked the knees in his arms as best as he could and hoisted Marcus's lower half. Sejanus encircled his chest with his arms. They began to move, half carrying, half dragging the body toward the barricade. 10 yards, 5 yards, not far now. Once they cleared it, the peacekeepers should provide some cover. He tripped on a rock and went down, driving his knee into something sharp and piercing, but sprang back up, heaving Marcus's body with him. Almost there. Almost. The footsteps came from behind him, quick and light, speeding from the barricade where the tribute had lain in wait. Coriolanus reflexively dropped Marcus and spun around, just in time to see Bobbin bringing down his knife. I knew it was going to happen. I knew. I guessed it. Oh, one for Coriolanus. Anyway, the blade glanced off his body armor and sliced into his left upper arm. As Coriolanus leaped backward, he swung at Bobbins, but only encountered air. He landed in a pile of debris, old boards, and plaster as his hand searched for some kind of defense. Bobbin sprang at him again, aiming the knife at his face. Coriolanus' fingers closed around a 2x4 and he brought it up, catching Bobbin in the temple hard, sending him to his knees. Then he was on his feet, using the board like a club, bringing it down again and again, without being sure where it made contact. We have to go, Sejanus shouted. Coriolanus could hear cat calls now, and feet pounding down the bleachers. Confused, he made a run towards Marcus's body, and Sejanus yanked him away. No! Leave him! Run! Needing no persuasion, Coriolanus sprinted for the barricade. Pain shot from his elbow to his shoulder, but he ignored it, pumping his arms as fast as he could, the way Professor Sickle had taught them. When he reached the barricade, barbed wire bit into his shirt, and he turned to pull it free. He saw them, the 2 tributes from District 4, Coral and Mizzen, and Tanner, the slaughterhouse kid, making straight for him, armed to the teeth. Mizzen drew his arm back to throw a trident. The fabric of Coriolanus' shirt ripped wide open as he yanked it from the barbed wire, and dove out of the line of fire, with Sejanus right behind him. Only a few weak rays of moonlight penetrated the layers of the barricade, and Coriolanus found himself crashing into wood and fencing like a wild bird in a cage, surely alerting any tribute who'd somehow missed his presence. He ran face first into a concrete slab, and Sejanus plowed into him from behind, smacking his forehead into the unrelenting surface a second time. When he pushed back, it was as if the concussion had never left. His head throbbed, and a cloud of confusion descended. The tributes started up a whooping sound, rattling their weapons against the barricade as they tracked the mentors through the labyrinth. Which direction to go? The tribute seemed to be all around them. Sejanus grabbed his arm and began to pull him, and he stumbled blindly along behind, wounded and terrified. Was this it, then? Was this how he died? The fury at the injustice of it all, the mockery it made of his existence, sent a surge of energy through him, and he crashed past Sejanus, finding himself on his hands and knees in a cloud of soft, red light. The passageway! Up ahead he could make out the turnstiles, where the peacekeepers were clustered at the temporary bars. He ran for his life. The passageway wasn't long, but it seemed interminable. Interminable? Interminable. His legs rose and fell as if he were waist-high in glue, and black specks dotted his vision. Sejanus stayed at his elbow, but he could hear the tributes gaining, something heavy and unyielding. A brick? Clipped the side of his neck. Another object punctured his vest and stuck, bobbing behind him until it fell with a clank. Where was the cover, the protective gunfire from the peacekeepers? There was nothing at all, and the bars still stood flush with the floor. He wanted to scream for them to kill the tributes, shoot them dead in their tracks, but his breath was in too short supply. Someone heavy-footed shrank his lead to a few yards, but once again, remembering Professor Sickles' training, he didn't dare waste a second looking back to see who it was. Before him, the peacekeepers finally managed to tilt the unit of bars inward, achieving a gap of about 12 inches to the ground. Coriolanus dove, sanding several layers of skin off his chin on the rough floor, and just getting his hands beneath the bars when the peacekeepers latched onto him and gave a great yank. Lacking time to turn his head, the rest of his face scraped against the filthy surface until he reached safety. The guards dumped him immediately to retrieve Sejanus, who gave a sharp cry as Tanner's knife cut open the back of his calf before he slid out of range. The bars were slammed into place. The bolt locked down the unit, but the tributes were undeterred. Tanner, Mizzen, and Coral jabbed their weapons through the bars at Coriolanus and Sejanus, spewing hate-filled taunts while the peacekeepers banged on the turnstiles with their batons. Not a shot was fired, not even a shot of pepper spray. Coriolanus realized that they must have been under orders to leave the tributes untouched. As the peacekeepers helped him to his feet, he spat out in rage. "Thanks for having our backs!" "Just following orders. Don't blame us if Gaul thinks you're expendable, boy," said the old peacekeeper who'd promised him cover. Someone tried to steady him, but he shoved them off. I can walk, no thanks to you." Then he listed sideways, almost hitting the floor before they hoisted him up again, and made their way back through the lobby. Coriolanus babbled a long string of profanities, which made no impression, and hung in their grip like dead weight until they dropped him, unceremoniously, just outside the arena. After a minute, they deposited Sejanus beside him. They both lay panting on the tiles that graced the front of the arena. "I'm so sorry, Corio," said Sejanus. "I'm so sorry." Corio was a nickname for old friends, for family, for people Coriolanus loved. And this was the moment Sejanus decided to try it out. If he'd had the energy, Coriolanus could have reached over and strangled him. Okay, low-key, we're locking in for this. Low-key, it's giving enemies to lovers, and I kind of want to see a subplot where Coriolanus and Sejanus get together. Like, just saying it could happen. Anything could happen. Anyway. Oh yeah, and Coriolanus is a bitch. Anyways, nothing new there. No one paid them any attention. Ma had vanished. Dr. Gall and Dean Highbottom debated audio levels as they watched the feeds in the van. The peacekeepers stood in loose clumps, waiting for instructions. 5 minutes passed before an ambulance drove up and popped open its back doors. The boys were loaded in without so much as a glance from the authorities. The medic gave Coriolanus a pad to hold against his arm wound, while she dealt with the more pressing issue, Sejanus' calf, which was producing quite a bit of blood. Coriolanus dreaded returning to the hospital and that untrustworthy Dr. Wayne until he saw through a small pane of glass that they'd arrived at the Citadel, which seemed twice as scary. Unloaded onto gurneys, they were swiftly transported deep down to the lab where Clementia had been attacked, leaving Coriolanus to wonder just what modifications they had in store for him. Accidents must have been frequent in the lab, as a small medical clinic awaited them. It had lacked the sophistication for Clementia's resurrection, yet seemed adequate to patch up the boys. A white curtain divided their two hospital beds, but Coriolanus could hear Sejanus giving one-word answers to the doctor's inquiries. He gave little more himself as they stitched his arm and cleaned his raw face. His head ached, but he didn't dare tell them about the rebound of his concussion for fear he'd end up being admitted to the hospital for an indefinite stay. Yeah, I would be scared of that too. All he wanted was to get away from these people. Despite his protests, they stuck an IV in his arm to rehydrate him and deliver some cocktail of drugs. He lay rigid on the bed, willing himself not to flee. Although he'd done Dr. Gall's bidding, although he had succeeded, he felt, yes! Yes! Sorry, I just saw a New York Times article. Yes! This is so amazing. Okay. I'm not going to talk about it. Anyways, back to what we're here for. Although he'd done Dr. Gall's bidding, although he'd succeeded, he felt more vulnerable than ever, and here he lay, wounded and trapped, hidden away in her lair. The pain eased in his arm, but he did not feel the velvet curtain of morphine draw around him. Some alternative drug must have been administered, because, if anything, his mind felt a heightened sharpness, and he noticed everything, from the weave of the bed sheet to the tug of the tape on his raw skin, to the bitter taste of the metal cup of water left on his tongue. Peacekeeper Boots approached and withdrew, taking a limping Sejanus with them. Deep in the lab, a round of squeals heralded some creature's feeding time, and a faint scent of fish reached him. After that, a relative hush fell over the place for a long time. He considered trying to slip away, but knew in his heart he was expected to wait. To wait for the soft slippered tread that inevitably made its way to his cubicle. When Dr. Gall pulled back the curtain, the twilight of the nocturnal lab gave Coriolanus the strange impression that she stood on the edge of a cliff, that if he were to give her even the smallest shove, she would topple backward into some great chasm, never to be heard from again. If only, he thought, if only. Instead, she moved forward and placed 2 fingers on his wrist, checking his pulse. He flinched at the feel of her cold, papery fingers. I started out as a medical doctor, you know, she said. Obstetrics. How awful, Coriolanus thought, to have you be the first person in the world a baby sees. Oh, didn't know what that was. Wasn't really for me, said Dr. Gall. Parents always want reassurances you can't give about the futures their children face. How could I possibly know what they'd encounter? Like you, tonight. Who would have imagined Crassius Snow's darling baby boy fighting for his life in the Capitol arena? Not him, for one. Coriolanus didn't know how to respond. He could barely remember his father, let alone divine his imaginings. What was it like in the arena? Asked Dr. Gall. Terrifying, said Coriolanus flatly. It's designed to be. She checked his pupils, shining a light into each of his eyes. What about the tributes? The light hurt his head. What about them? Dr. Gall moved on to his stitches. What did you think of them, now that their chains had been removed, now that they've tried to kill you? Because it was of no benefit to them, your death. You're not the competition. It was true. They'd been close enough to recognize him, but they'd hunted down him and Sejanus. Sejanus, who treated the tributes so well, fed them, defended them, given them last rites, even though they could have used that opportunity to kill one another. I think I underestimated how much they hated us, said Coriolanus. And when you realized that, what was your response? She asked. He thought back to Bobbin, to the escape, to the tributes' bloodlust after he cleared the bars. I wanted them dead. I wanted every one of them dead. Oh my gosh. Dr. Gall nodded. Well, mission accomplished with that little one from 8. You beat him to a pulp. What? That little one from 8, you beat him to a pulp. Have to make up some story for that buffoon. Oh, right, because the break. You beat him to a pulp. Have to make up some story for that buffoon Flickerman to tell in the morning. But what a wonderful opportunity for you. Transformative. Was it? Coriolanus remembered the sickening thuds of his board against Bobbin. Oof. So he had what? Murdered the boy? No, not that. It was an open-shut case of self-defense. What then? He had killed him, certainly. There would never be any erasing that. No regaining that innocence. He had taken human life. Wasn't it? More than I could have hoped. I needed you to get Sejanus out of that arena, of course, but I wanted you to taste that as well, she said. Even if it killed me? Asked Coriolanus. Without the threat of death, it wouldn't have been much of a lesson, said Dr. Gall. What happened in that arena? What happened in that arena? That's humanity undressed. What happened in that arena? That's humanity undressed. The tributes, and you too. How quickly civilization disappears. All your fine manners, education, family, background, everything you pride yourself on, stripped away in the blink of an eye, revealing everything you actually are. A boy with a club who beats another boy to death. That's mankind in its natural state. The idea laid out as such shocked him But he attempted to laugh. Are we really as bad as all that? I would say yes, absolutely. But it's a matter of personal opinion. Dr. Gall pulled a roll of gauze from her pocket of the lab coat. What do you think? I think I would have beaten anyone to death if you hadn't stuck me in. I wouldn't have beaten anyone to death if you hadn't stuck me in that arena, he retorted. You can't blame it on the circumstances, the environment, but you made the choices you made, no one else. It's a lot to take in all at once, but it's essential that you make an effort to answer that question. Who are human beings? Because who we are determines the type of governing we need. Later on, I hope you can reflect and be honest with yourself about what you learned tonight. Dr. Gall began to wrap his wound in gauze. And a few stitches in your arm is a cheap price to pay for it. Coriolanus felt nauseous at her words, but even more enraged that she had forced him to kill for the sake of her lesson. Something that significant should have been his decision, not hers. No one's but his. So, if I'm a vicious animal, then who are you? You're the teacher who sent her student to beat another boy to death. Oh yes, that role has fallen to me. She neatly finished the bandage off. You know, Dean Highbottom and I read your essay through. What you liked about war? A lot of fluff. Drivel, really. Until that bit at the end. The part about control. For your next assignment, I'd like you to elaborate on that. The value of control, and what happens without it. Take your time with it, but it might be a nice addition to your prize application. Coriolanus knew what happened without control. He'd seen it recently at the zoo when Arachne died, in the arena when the bombs went off, and then again tonight. Chaos happens. What else is there to say? Oh, a good deal, I think. Start with that. Chaos. No control, no law, no government at all. Like being in that arena. Where do we go from there? What sort of agreement is necessary if we're to live in peace? What sort of social contract is required for survival? She removed the drip from his arm. We'll need you back in a couple of days to check those stitches. Until then, I would keep the night's events to yourself. Better get home and catch a few hours of sleep. Remarkably, your tribute still needs you. After she left, Coriolanus slowly pulled on the sliced, torn, bloody shirt and fastened his buttons. He wandered until he found the elevator to street level, and the disinterested guards waved him out. The trolleys ended at midnight, and the Capitol clock showed 2. So he pointed his filthy shoes towards home. The Blint's luxurious car slid up beside him, and the window lowered to reveal the Avox, who stepped out and opened the back door for him. Coriolanus guessed he'd already taken to Janet's home, and Mom had sent him back. Since the car was empty of the Plinths, he got in. One last ride, then he wanted nothing to do with that family ever again. When the driver let him out at his apartment, Coriolanus was presented with a large paper bag. Before he could object, the car pulled away. Upstairs, he peeked in to see Tigress waiting by the tea table, wrapped in a ratty fur coat that had been her mother's. It was her security blanket, much as the rose powder compact had been his before he revamped it as a weapon. He grabbed a school jacket from the coat rack and pulled it over the damaged shirt before he went in to see her. Coriolanus tried to make light of the dreadful night. Surely it's not so bad. You need the coat. Her fingers dug into the fur. You tell me. Wait. Surely it's not so bad you need the coat. Oh, her fingers dug into the fur. You tell me. I will, every bit of it. But in the morning, okay? He said. Okay. When she reached up to hug him goodnight, her hand felt the bulge of the bandage on his arm. Before he could stop her, she pulled back the jacket and saw the blood. She bit her lip. Oh, Corio, they made you go into the arena, didn't they? He hugged her. Not that bad, really. I'm here. Got Janice out, too. I'm surprised they both survived. Not that bad. It's horrific to think of you in there. To think of anyone in there, she cried. Poor Lucy Gray. Lucy Gray. Now that he'd been in the arena himself, her circumstance seemed even more dire than before. The thought of her huddled somewhere in the cold blackness of the arena, too petrified to close her eyes, made him ache. This is crazy. This is like man discovers empathy. Because, like, would you not be thinking of, like, how they're feeling in the arena the whole time? How is this thought just now occurring to him? Like, he had to go in the arena and almost die in order to know what it felt like. Oh my gosh. For the first time, he felt glad he'd killed Bobbin. Oh my gosh. At least he'd saved her from that animal. Okay. This is like some backwards thinking happening here. It's going to be okay, Tigress, but you have to let me get some rest. You need to sleep too. She nodded, but he knew she'd be lucky to snag an hour or 2. He handed her the bag, courtesy of Ma Plinth. Breakfast by the smell of it. See you then? Not bothering to bathe, he collapsed into a comatose sleep till the sound of the grandmam singing the anthem woke him. Time to be getting up anyway. Aching head to toe, he teetered to the shower, removed the gauze from his arm, and let the hot water scream over his scraped flesh. He had a tube of ointment from his time in the hospital, and although unsure of its use, dabbed it on his raw face and chin. The stitches on his arms snagged on his clean shirt, but no new bleeding appeared. He'd wear his jacket today just in case. Throwing a toothbrush and a fresh uniform in his book bag, he took one last look in the mirror and sighed. Bicycle accident, he thought. That's the story. Not that I've been working not that I've had a working bicycle in years. Well, now he had an excuse for its broken condition. Once he was presentable, the first thing he did was check the television to make sure no harm had come to Lucy Gray. But the camera hadn't shifted. The only tribute visible in the early morning light was Lamina on her beam. Avoiding the grand... There's a train. That's funny. Avoiding the grandmam, he came into the kitchen, where Tigress was warming up the leftover jasmine tea. Running late, he said, I better get going. Take this for breakfast. She put a packet in his hands and placed a pair of tokens in his pocket. And make the trolley today. Needing to conserve energy, he did as he was told, riding the trolley and eating 2 loaded egg and sausage rolls Mrs. Plinth had sent over. His only regret about ditching the Plinths would be the loss of her cooking. Wow. No, he doesn't, feel bad for them, at all or anything like that. That's crazy. Anyway. Excuse me. The main student body had been told to report at 7:45, so the early birds consisted of the active mentors and a few AVOXs tidying up the hallway. Coriolanus couldn't help throwing a guilty look at Juno Phipps, who sat discussing her strategy with dementia when she could have slept in. He didn't much like her. She was always throwing her family lineage in his face, as if his wasn't as good. But last night hadn't been fair to her. Last night hadn't been fair to her either. He wondered how they would reveal Bobbin's death, and how he would feel when they did. Besides Queasy. Excuse me. The only thing being served at Heavensby Hall was tea, which brought grumblings from Festus. If we have to be here early, you'd think they could have at least feed us. What happened to your face? Oh. If we have to be here early, you'd think they could at least feed us. What happened to your face? There we go. Bike accident, Coriolanus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He tossed the bag with a last roll to Festus, happy to be able to offer food for a change. He owed the Creeds more meals than he cared to remember. Thanks, this looks great, said Festus, digging in immediately. Lysistrata recommended a cream to prevent infection, and they went ahead and took their seats as their schoolmates began to arrive. Although the sun had been up for a few hours, nothing much appeared changed on the screen, except the disappearance of Marcus's body. I guess they removed it, said Puck. But Coriolanus thought it might still be by the barricade where he and Sejanus had abandoned it last night, just out of range of the shot. At the stroke of 8, they all rose for the anthem, which his classmates finally seemed to be getting a handle on, and then Lucky Flickerman appeared, welcoming them to Day 2 of the Hunger Games. While you were sleeping, something pretty important happened. Let's take a look, shall we? They cut back to a wide shot of the arena, then slowly panned the camera around to the barricade, zooming in. As Coriolanus had suspected, Marcus's body lay where he and Sejanus had dropped it. A few feet away, Bobbin's battered form slumped against a chunk of concrete. It looked much, much worse than he'd imagined. The bloody limbs... The dislodged eye? Ew! The face so swollen it was unrecognizable. Had he really done that to another boy? And such a young boy, too, for in death Bobbin looked tinier than ever. Lost in that dark web of terror, it seemed he had. Oh my gosh. Perspiration beaded Coriolanus' forehead, and he wanted to leave the hall. The building, the entire event behind. But of course that wasn't an option. Who was he? Sejanus? Yikes. He's grappling with either being Dr. Gall or being Sejanus. There's no in between for him right now. After a good long look at the bodies, the slow cut back to Lucky as he pondered who might have done the deed. Then his mood changed abruptly. One thing we do know is that we've got something to celebrate. Confetti fell from the ceiling, and Lucky blew madly away on his plastic horn. Because we've just hit the halfway mark. That's right. 12 tributes down, only 12 to go. A string of brightly colored handkerchiefs shot out of his hand. He swung it around his head, dancing and cheering. Woo-wee! When he finally wound down, he adopted a sad expression. But that also means we've got to say farewells to Miss Juno Phipps. Lepidus? Lepidus had already positioned himself at the end of the unsuspecting Juno's aisle. She had no choice but to join him and work through her disappointment on camera. Given a little notice, Coriolanus imagined she'd have comported herself more graciously. But as it was, she came off as sour and suspicious, questioning the recent developments as she flashed a leather binder inlaid with the Phipps family crest. Something seems fishy to me, she told Lepidus. I mean, what's going on over there with Marcus's body? Who moved it? And how did Bobbin end up dead? I can't imagine a likely scenario. I feel like there might have been foul play. The reporter seems genuinely puzzled. What would qualify as foul play exactly? I mean, in the arena. Well, I don't know exactly, steamed Juno, but I, for one, would like to see a replay of last night's events. Good luck with that, Juno, Coriolanus thought. Then he realized it did exist. In the back of the van, Dr. Gall and Dean Highbottom had been watching both versions, the real feed and the one they darkened to obscure his mission. Even the regular one would be hard to make out. Still, he didn't like it. The idea that somewhere there was a record, however shadowy, of him killing Bobbin. If it were ever to get out, well, he didn't know what, but it made him uneasy. Lepidus didn't dally with Juno, a sore loser who lacked Felix's grace and defeat, and she was directed back to her seat with a consoling pat on the back. Still sparkly with confetti, Lucky seemed oblivious to her pain. He leaned in toward the camera with barely contained glee. And now, what do you suppose? We've got an extra big surprise, especially if you're one of the 12 remaining mentors. Coriolanus only had a moment to exchange questioning looks with his friends before Lucky bounded across the studio to reveal Sejanus sitting side by side with his father, Strabo Plinth, whose stern expression seemed carved from the very granite of his home district. Lucky took the host chair and patted Sejanus on the leg. Sejanus, I'm sorry we didn't get a moment with you yesterday to let you comment on the demise of your tribute, Marcus. Sejanus just stared at Lucky uncomprehendingly. Lucky seemed to notice the abrasions on his face for the first time. What's going on here? You look like you've been mixing it up yourself. I fell off my bike, Sejanus rasped, and Coriolanus winced slightly. 2 bike mishaps in the same 12-hour period seemed more than coincidental. Ouch. Well, I guess you have some pretty big news to share with us, Lucky said with an encouraging nod. Sejanus lowered his eyes for a moment, and while neither father nor son acknowledged each other, a battle seemed to be occurring. Yes, Sejanus finally began. We, the Plinth family, would like to announce that we will be giving a prize for a full ride to the university to the mentor whose tribute wins the Hunger Games. Pup let out a whoop. The other mentors grinned at one another. Coriolanus knew most of them didn't need the money as badly as he did, if at all, but it would be a feather in anyone's cap. Sensational, said Lucky. What a thrill those 12 remaining mentors must be experiencing right now. Was this your idea, Strabo, to create the Plinth Prize? Ooh. My sons, actually, said Strabo. Unlocked a new voice. My sons, actually, said Strabo, curving the edges of his lips up in what Coriolanus thought might be an attempt at a smile. Well, what a generous and appropriate gesture, especially given Sejanus' defeat. You may not have won the games, but you've certainly taken home the prize for good sportsmanship. I think I speak for the capital when I say many thanks. Lucky beamed up at the pair, but as nothing else was forthcoming, he made a sweeping gesture with his arm. All right then, back to the arena. Coriolanus' mind reeled with the new development. Sejanus had been right about his father's hasty attempt to bury his son's outrageous behavior in cash. Not that it didn't merit damage control. He hadn't heard much reaction from the others in Heavensby Hall about the outburst with the chair, but he expected stories were going around. A prize for the victor's mentor seemed a small price to pay, really. What would Plinth offer to prevent word of Sejanus' trip to the arena from going public? Could he be planning to buy Coriolanus' silence? Never mind that, thought Coriolanus told himself. The bigger news was the possibility of winning the Plinth Prize. It was independent of the Academy, so Dean Highbottom wouldn't have a say in it. Even Dr. Gall would not. A full ride that would free him from their power and lift his awful anxiety about the future from his shoulders. Already high, the stakes of these games shot into the stratosphere. Focus, he told himself, drawing slow, deep breaths. Focus on helping Lucy Gray. What was there to do, though, until she showed her face? As the morning passed, it seemed few tributes were tempted to do so. Coral and Mizzen roamed around together for a bit, collecting food and water from Festus and Persephone, their mentors. They'd been spending time together, trying to come up with a joint strategy for their tributes, and Coriolanus could see that Festus was falling for her. Ooh! Anyway, did you tell your best friend his crush was a cannibal? Oh shit, I forgot that her family did that. Her dad, oh, never a rulebook when you needed one. Damn. When they returned to the dice after lunch, they found the mentor seats had been reduced to 12, leaving only enough space for those whose tributes were still in the games. The game makers requested it, Satirio told the final dozen. It makes it easier for the audience to keep track of who's still a contender. We're to keep removing seats as your tributes are killed. Like musical chairs, said Dementia with a pleased look. But with people dying, said Lysistrata. The decision to bump the losers from the dais made Livia even more bitter, if that was possible, and Coriolanus was glad to see her relegated to the regular audience section, where he couldn't have her to hear, where he wouldn't have to hear her snarky comments. On the other hand, it made it harder to put distance between himself and Clementia, who seemed to spend all her free time glaring at him. He positioned himself in the last row, bolstered by Festus and Lysistrata, and tried to look engaged. As the afternoon unrolled, his head got heavier and heavier, until Lysistrata had to nudge him twice to keep him awake. Perhaps it was fortunate the day required so little of him, given that the night had almost killed him. There were few tribute settings, and Lucy Gray stayed completely hidden. Not until the late afternoon did the Hunger Games finally present the kind of action that people expected. The girl tribute from District 5, a rickety little thing who had been one of the unwashed herd to Coriolanus, made her way out onto the bleachers at the far end of the arena. Failing to find her name, Lucky just managed to connect her with her equally forgettable mentor, Iphigenia Moss, whose father oversaw the agriculture department, and thus the flow of food around Panem. Contrary to expectations, Iphigenia always seemed on the verge of malnutrition. Often giving her school lunch to her classmates and even blacking out on occasion. Oh, Girly Pop has anorexia. Clementia had once told Coriolanus it was the only revenge she could take on her father, but refused to give any more details. True to form, Iphigenia began to unload every bit of food she could on her tribute, but even as the drones made the long trek across the arena, Mizzen, Coral, and Tanner, who appeared to have formed some sort of pact after the previous night's adventure, materialized from the tunnels and began their hunt. After a brief chase along the bleachers, the tribute surrounded the girl, and Coral killed her with a trident to the throat. Well, that's that, said Lucky, still unable to locate the tribute's name. What can her mentor tell us, Lepidus? Iphigenia had already sought out Lepidus. Her name was Sol, or maybe Sal. She had a funny accent. Not much more to tell. Lepidus seemed inclined to agree. Nice job getting her to the second half, Albina. Iphigenia, said Iphigenia over her shoulder as she walked off the dais. That's right, said Lepidus. Oh my gosh, that's right, said Lepidus. And this means there's only 11 tributes left, which means 10 between me and that prize, thought Coriolanus. People's lives. Damn. As he watched an Avox remove Iphigenia's chair, he wished he could get food and water to Lucy Gray. What would happen if he sent it without knowing her location? On screen, the pack collected Sal's food and moved back toward the tunnels, probably to get some rest before the night came. Should he risk it now? He discussed it in whispers with Lysistrata, who felt that it might be worth a try if they sent drones in together. We don't want them getting too weak and dehydrated. I don't think Jessup's gotten anything down in days. Let's wait and see if they try and contact us. Let's give them until the supper break. But Lucy Gray made an entrance just as the student body was being released to go home. She darted out of a tunnel, running at full pitch, her hair loosened from her braids, and flying free behind her. Where's Jessup? Said Lysistrata with a frown. Why aren't they together? Before Coriolanus could venture a guess, Jessup staggered out of the same tunnel Lucy Gray fled from. At first, Coriolanus thought he had been wounded, possibly while defending Lucy Gray. But then, what accounted for her flight? Were other tributes in pursuit? As the camera moved in on Jessup, it became apparent that he was ill, not hurt. Stiff-limbed and feverish with excitement, he swiped at the sun a few times before crouching down and springing almost immediately back to his feet for his first close-up. Coriolanus wondered if Lucy Gray had found a way to poison him, but that didn't make sense. Jessup was too valuable as a protector, especially with the pack that had formed last night running around. What then ailed him? Any number of things could have sickened him. Any range of maladies been suspected. If it hadn't been for the telltale foam that began to bubble over his lips. He has rabies? He's rabid, Lysistrata said softly. Rabies had made a comeback in the capital during the war. Holy shit, this is crazy. Okay, during the war, with doctors needed in the field and facilities and supply lines compromised by the bombings, medical treatment had become sketchy for humans. Like Coriolanus' mother, and almost non-existent for the pampered capital pets. Vaccinating your cat wasn't on the list of priorities when you couldn't scrape up enough money for bread. How it began remained a matter of debate. An infected coyote from the mountains, a nocturnal encounter with a bat, but the dogs spread it. Most of them were starving, abandoned casualties of the war themselves, from dog to dog, and then to people. The virulent strain developed with unprecedented speed, killing over a dozen capital citizens before a vaccination program brought it under control. Coriolanus remembered the posters alerting people to the warning signs in animals and humans alike, adding just one more potential threat to his world. He thought of Jessup with his handkerchief pressed against his neck. The rat bite? Not a rat, said Lysistrata, shock and sadness on her face. Rats almost never spread rabies. Probably one of those mangy raccoons. Lucy said he mentioned fur, so I'd assumed. He mentioned fur. He trailed off. Not that it mattered what had bit Jessup. It was a death sentence any way you sliced it. He must have been infected about 2 weeks ago. It was fast, wasn't it? Very fast. Because he was bit in the neck, the quicker it gets to the brain, the quicker you die, Lysistrata explained. And of course, he's half-starved and weak. If she said so, it was probably true. This was just the sort of thing he'd imagined the Vickers family discussing over dinner, their calm, clinical manner. Poor Jessup, said Lysistrata. Even his death has to be horrible. The recognition of Jessup's illness put the audience on edge, setting off a wave of comments thick with fear and revulsion. Rabies? How'd he get that? Running from the districts, all bad. Great, now I'll infect the whole city. All the students dropped back into their seats, not wanting to miss anything, dredging up childhood memories of the disease. Coriolanus stayed silent in solidarity with Lysistrata, but his concern grew as Jessup zigzagged across the arena in Lucy Gray's direction. No telling what was going on in his mind. Under normal circumstances, Coriolanus was certain he'd protect her, but he clearly lost his reason if she'd run for her life. The cameras tracked Lucy Gray. She sprinted across the arena, began to scramble up a broken wall into the stands holding the main press box. Positioned midway in the arena, it occupied several rows and had somehow been spared in the bombing. She stopped a moment, panting, while she considered Jessup's erratic pursuit. Then she made for the debris of the nearby concession stand. The skeleton of the frame remained, but the center had been blasted into bits, and the roof had been flung 30 feet away. Strewn by bricks and boards, the area presented a sort of obstacle course that she traversed until she planted herself at the top of the mess. The game makers took advantage of her stillness and zoomed in for a close-up. Coriolanus took one look at her cracked lips and reached for his comicuff. She appeared to have had no access to water since she'd been left in the arena, and that had been a day and a half ago. He punched in the order for a water bottle. The promptness of the drone delivery was improving with each request. Even if she had to keep running, they would be able to get water to her if she stayed in the open. If she could escape Jessup, Coriolanus would load her up with both food and drink, for her own use and to lace with the rat poison. But that seemed like a long-term plan at the moment. Jessup made his way across the arena and seemed confused by Lucy Gray's rejection. He began to climb after her into the stands, but he had trouble keeping his balance. As he entered the fields of debris, his coordination diminished further, and twice he fell with great force, opening gashes on his knee and temple. After the second wound, which generated a fair amount of blood, he sat, somewhat stunned, on a step, reaching out to her. His mouth moved while the foam began dripping from his chin. Lucy Gray remained motionless, watching Jessup with a pained expression. They created a strange tableau. Rabid boy, trapped girl, bombed-out building. It suggested a tale that could only end in tragedy. Star-crossed lovers, Star-crossed lovers from 12, star-crossed lovers meeting their fate. A revenge story turned in on itself, a war saga that took no prisoners. Please die, Coriolanus thought. What eventually killed you when you had rabies? You couldn't breathe, or maybe your heart stopped? Whatever it was, the sooner it happened to Jessup, the better it was for everyone involved. Drone carrying a bottle of water flew into the arena. Lucy Gray lifted her face to track its wobbly progress. Her tongue flicked across her lips as if in anticipation. However, as it passed over Jessup's head, something registered. A shudder wrecked his body. He swung at it with a board, and the drone crashed into the stands. The water pooling out of the cracked bottle sent him into a state of heightened agitation. He backed away, tripping over the seats, and then made straight for Lucy Gray. She, in turn, began to climb even higher. Coriolanus panicked. While the strategy of putting the wreckage between herself and Jessup had some merit, she was in danger of being cut off from the field. The virus may have compromised Jessup's movement, but it also loaned a manic speed to his powerful body, and nothing distracted him from Lucy Gray. Except that moment with the water, he thought. The water. The word surfaced in his brain, a word from the poster that had papered the capital for a time. Hydrophobia, a fear of water. The inability to swallow made rabies victims go wild at the sight of it. Oh, that's why they drool. Okay. His fingers began to work his communicuff to order bottles of water, perhaps enough for them to frighten Jessup away. He would drain his bank if he had to. Lysistrata placed her hand on his, stopping him. No, let me. He's my tribute after all. She began to order bottle after bottle, sending in the water to drive Jessup over the brink. Her face registered little emotion, but a single tear slid down her cheek, just kissing the edge of her mouth before she brushed it away. Lissy, he hadn't called her that since they were tiny. You don't have to. Jessup can't win. I want Lucy Gray to. That's what he'd want. And she can't win if he kills her, she thought. What might happen anyway? On screen, Coriolanus could see that Lucy Gray had indeed worked herself into a tough spot. To her left stood the high back wall of the arena. To her right, the thick glass slide of the press box. As Jessup continued his pursuit, she made several attempts to escape him, but he kept correcting his course to block her. When he came within 20 feet, she began to talk to him, putting her hand out in a soothing manner. It stopped him, but only momentarily, and he made for her again. Far across the arena, the first bottle of Lysistrata's water, or perhaps the replacement for the one that had crashed, began its flight towards the tributes. The machine seemed steadier and truer in its course, as did the small fleet that followed it. The moment Lucy Gray spied the drones, she stopped her retreat. Coriolanus saw her hand pat the ruffles of her skirt over the pocket with a silver compact, and he took it as a sign that she had grasped the significance of the water. She pointed over to the drones, beginning to shout, and succeeded in getting Jessup to turn his head. Jessup froze. His eyes bulged with fear as the drones closed in on him. He pawed at them, but failed to connect. When they started releasing the bottles of water, he lost all control. Explosive devices could have elicited a stronger response, and could not have elicited a stronger response, and the impact of the bottles smacking into the seats whipped him into a frenzy. The contents of one splattered his hand, and he recoiled as if it were acid. He gained his aisle and bounded down towards the field, but another dozen drones arrived and bombarded him. Since they were directed to deliver right to the tribute, there was no escaping them. As he flew down toward the front row seats, his foot caught, and he tripped forward, hurtling over the arena wall and onto the field. The sound of snapping bones that accompanied his landing surprised the audience as Jessup had landed in a rare pocket of the arena with good audio. He lay on his back, motionless, except for the heaving in his chest. The remaining bottles rained down on him, while his lips curled back and his eyes stared unblinkingly at the bright sun glinting off the water. Lucy Gray darted down the steps and hung over the railing. Jessup! The most he could do was shift his gaze to her face. Coriolanus could barely hear Lysistrata whisper, "Oh, don't let him die alone." Weighing the danger, Lucy took a moment to assess the empty arena before she picked her way down the broken wall to his side. Coriolanus wanted to groan. She needed to get out of there, but he couldn't do it with Lysistrata beside him. She won't, he reassured Lysistrata, thinking of how Lucy Gray had dragged the burning beam from his body. It's not her style. I've got some money left, said Lysistrata, wiping her eyes. I'll send some food. Jessup followed Lucy Gray with his eyes as she jumped the last yard to the field, but he seemed unable to move. Was he paralyzed by the fall? She approached him with caution and knelt just out of reach of his long arms. Trying to smile, she said, "You go to sleep now, you hear, Jessup? You go on. It's my turn to stand guard." Something seemed to register, her voice, or perhaps the repetition of words she'd spoken to him over the past 2 weeks. The rigidity eased in his face and his eyelids fluttered. "That's right. Let yourself go. How are you going to dream if you don't go to sleep?" Lucy Gray scooted forward and laid a hand on his head. "It's okay. I'll watch over you. I'm right here. I'm staying right here." Jessup stared at her fixedly as the life slowly ebbed out of his body and his chest became still. Lucy Gray smoothed his bangs and sat back on her heels. She heaved a deep sigh, and Coriolanus could feel her exhaustion. She shook her head as if to wake herself, then grabbed the nearest bottle of water, twisting off the top and draining it in a few gulps. A second followed, and a third, before she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She stood up and examined Jessup, then opened another bottle and poured it over his face, washing away the foam and spittle. From her pocket, she took the white linen napkin that had lined the picnic box Coriolanus brought her the final night. She leaned down and used the edge to gently shut his eyelids, then shook out the cloth and covered his face to hide it from the audience. The food parcels from Lysistrata thumping down around her seemed to bring Lucy Gray back to the moment, and she quickly scooped up the pieces of bread and cheese and stuffed them in her pockets. She gathered the bottles of water in her skirt, but pulled up short as Reaper appeared at the far end of the arena. Lucy Gray lost no time in vanishing into the nearest tunnel with her gifts. Reaper let her go, but walked over to collect the last few water bottles in the fading light, taking note of Jessup, but leaving his body alone. Coriolanus thought it might bode well for later, if the tributes kept making a habit of scavenging the gifts of the fallen. They'd play right into the poisoning plan. He didn't have much time to dwell on it, though, as Lepidus arrived to claim Lysistrata. "Whoa," Lepidus said. "That was unexpected. Did he know about the rabies?" "Of course not. I would have alerted the authorities so they could test the raccoons in the zoo," she said. "What? You mean he didn't bring it from the districts?" said Lepidus. Lysistrata was firm. "No, he was bitten here in the capital." "At the zoo?" Lepidus looked worried. "A lot of us have been spending time at the zoo. A raccoon was over by my equipment, scratching around with those weird little hands, and—" "You don't have rabies," Lysistrata said flatly. Lepidus made a clawing motion with his fingers. It was touching my things." "Do you have any questions about Jessup?" she asked. "Jessup? No, I never got near him." "Oh, you meant, did you have any thoughts?" he asked. "I do." She took a deep breath. "What I'd like people to know about Jessup is that he was a good person. He threw his body over mine to protect me when the bombs started going off in the arena. It wasn't even conscious. He did it reflexively. That's who he was at heart, a protector. I didn't think he would have ever won the games, but he'd have died trying to protect Lucy Gray." "Oh, like a dog or something?" Lepidus nodded. "A really good one." "No, not like a dog, like a human being," said Lysistrata. Lepidus eyed her, trying to decipher whether she was joking. "Huh. Lucky, any thoughts from headquarters?" The camera caught Lucky gnawing on a stubborn hangnail. "Oh, what? Hey! Nothing upstairs at the moment. Let's peek back in the arena, shall we?" With the cameras averted, Lysistrata began to collect her things. "Don't go yet. Stay for dinner with us," Coriolanus said. "Oh no, I just want to go home. But thanks for being there, Corio. You're a good ally," she said. He hugged her. "You are." "I know that wasn't easy," she sighed. "Well, at least I'm out of it." The other mentors gathered around her, saying good job and whatever. Before she... saying good job and whatever. That's funny. That's just like the phrasing of that. Before she left the hall without waiting for the rest of the student body to head out. Can I make this light warmer? Nope, only colder. Got it? Okay. That was soon to follow. Oh, wait. The other mentors gathered around her, saying good job and whatever, before she left the hall without waiting for the rest of the student body to head out. That was soon to follow, and within a few minutes the 10 remaining mentors were all that was left behind. They examined one another with new eyes now that the Plinth Prize was in play, each hoping not to have a victor, but to be a victor in the games. Yeah, Dr. Gall's made this like dual Hunger Games where both the tributes and the mentors are like playing in their own games, which is really interesting. The same thought must have occurred to the game makers, because Lucky reclaimed the screen to do a rundown of the remaining tributes and their mentors. A split screen showed photos of the pairing side by side, accompanied by his voiceover. Some of the mentors groaned when they realized their unflattering student ID photos had been downloaded, but Coriolanus felt relieved that they weren't highlighting his current scabby face. Ooh, sorry, I had to pop my neck. Scabby face. The tributes, who had no official photographs, showed up in random shots taken since the reaping. The list went chronologically by district, starting with District 3's Urban Tesley and EO Cirque. These names are so weird, pairings. Our tech district tributes have us all wondering, what did they do with those drones? Said Lucky. Festus and Coral appeared next, followed by Persephone and Mizzen. The District 4 tributes are sailing high as we enter the final 10. Lamina on her beam and Pup's photo brought a cheer from Pup until it was replaced by Treach juggling at the zoo and Vipsania. And the crowd's favorite, Lamina and Pliny Harrington, are joined by the District 7 boy, Treach, and his mentor, Vipsania Sickle. So Districts 3, 4, and 7 all have both their teams intact. Now to the solo tributes. A blurry picture of Wovey crouched down at the zoo, coupled with Hilarious with a bad acne outbreak. Wovey from District 8 with Hilarious Heavensby as a guide. Since they used his interview shot, Tanner looked better as he came up side by side with Domisha. The boy from 10 can't wait to put his slaughterhouse techniques to good use. Then, Reaper standing strong in the arena, matched with a flawless-looking Clementia. Here's a tribute you might want to rethink. Reaper from 11. Oh, he's from 11. Okay. Finally, Coriolanus saw his own photo. Not great, not bad. With a dazzling photo of Lucy Gray singing at the interview. And the award for most popular goes to Coriolanus Snow and Lucy Gray from 12. Most popular. It was flattering, Coriolanus supposed, but not especially intimidating. Never mind, though. Popular had gotten Lucy Gray a pile of money. She was alive, watered, fed, and well-stocked. Hopefully she could hold up while the others thinned their ranks. Losing Jessup as her protector was a blow, but it would be easier for her to hide by herself. Coriolanus had promised her she would never really be alone in the arena, that he would be with her all the way. Was she holding on to that compact now, thinking of him as he was of her? Coriolanus updated his mentor sheet, taking no pleasure in crossing out Jessup and Lysistrata. It's just an updated mentor sheet. The field had narrowed considerably, but several of the surviving tributes would be tough to beat. Reaper, Tanner, both of those District 4 tributes, and who knew what the brainy little pair from District 3 was up to. As the 10 mentors gathered for a delicious lamb stew with dried plums, Coriolanus missed Lysistrata. She had been his only real ally, just as Jessup had been Lucy Gray's. After supper, he sat between Festus and Hilarious, doing his best to keep from nodding off. At around 9, with nothing eventful having happened since Jessup's death, they were sent home with orders to be there all the earlier the following morning. The walk home loomed, but he remembered the second token from Tigress and gratefully mounted the trolley, which dropped him a block from his apartment. The grandmam had gone to bed, but Tigress waited for him in his bedroom, again enveloped in her mother's fur coat. He collapsed on the chaise longue, I don't know how to say that, at her feet, knowing he owed her an explanation of his time in the arena. It wasn't only fatigue that made him hesitate. I know you want to hear about last night, he told her. But I'm afraid to tell you. I'm afraid you could get in trouble for knowing. It's okay, Corio. Your shirt's told me most of it. From the floor, she retrieved the shirt he wore in the arena. Close, speak to me, you know. She smoothed it out on her lap and began to reconstruct the terrors of his night. First, lifting the blood-stained slit in the material on the sleeve. Right there, this is where the knife cut you. Her fingers tracked the damage down the fabric. All these little rips, and the way the dirt's grounded in, tell me you slid, or maybe where you even were dragged, which matches up with the scrape on your chin and the blood on your collar. Tigress touched the neckline, then moved on. This other sleeve, the way it's been torn, I'd say you caught it on barbed wire. Probably at the barricade. But this blood here, the stuff splattered on the cuff. I don't think it's yours. I think you had to do something really awful in there. Coriolanus stared down at the blood and felt the impact of the beam on Bobbin's head. Tigress. She rubbed her temple, and I keep wondering how it came into this. That my baby cousin, who wouldn't hurt a fly, has to fight for his life in the arena. This was the last conversation in the world he wanted to have right now. I don't know. I didn't have a choice. I know that. Of course I know that. Tigress put her arms around him. I just hate what they're doing to you. I'm okay, he said. It won't last much longer. And even if I don't win, I'm a shoe-in for some sort of prize. Really, I think things are about to take a turn for the better. Right, yes, I'm sure they are. Snowland's on top, she agreed. But the look on her face spoke otherwise. What is it, he asked. She shook her head. Come on, what? I wasn't going to tell you until after the Hunger Games. She fell silent. But now you have to, he said, or I'll imagine the worst things possible. Please, just tell me. We'll figure something out. She started to rise. Tigress. He pulled her back down. What? Tigress reluctantly reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a letter with a capital stamp, and handed it to him. The tax bill came today. She didn't have to elaborate. Her expression told him everything. With no money for the taxes and no way to borrow more, the Snows were about to lose their home. And that is where I'm going to end it for today. We are probably about halfway through the book, which is exciting. And my thoughts on what's going to happen is I think we're not seeing the end of the plinths. I think the plinths are going to have something to do with them keeping the apartment. That's what I hope. Worst comes to worst, they get evicted, and they have to move out. They're forced to move out. And he has to, go live with the plinths or something, but I think the plinths, they're sticking around. They've done too much to just be booted from the story at this point, and as much as Coriolanus doesn't want to be around them, I just think they're good for him, because he experiences no empathy, and they just, they show empathy all the time. Excuse me, or at least the mother, or Sejanus and his mom. I think in the games, I think that they keep hinting that the District 3 kids are going to do something with the drones. So I originally thought that they were going to short-circuit the drones to electrocute the bars that Lamina had been sitting on, which she's still there. And then they were going to kill her, but I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think that they're going to do something with electrocuting or short-circuiting something. And I think that's going to take out Reaper or Tanner or one of big tributes. And then I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the book is called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I don't know what the songbirds are. I think that could be in reference to maybe Lucy Gray or the Mockingjay that she keeps talking about. It's not over till the Mockingjay sings, which could be interesting. The snakes, we've only had one look at snakes, and they were the really colorful ones in the lab. So I think those are going to enter the arena at some point. They also, the way they keep mentioning it's not over until the Mockingjay sings, I think maybe because we've already seen so many parallels between District 12 in this book and District 12 in the main trilogy. I mean, with the Star-Crossed Lovers and, I don't know, just I feel like Lucy Gray's whole vibe in general. So I think what's going to happen is Lucy Gray is actually the Mockingjay in this book, and she's going to have to sing at some point. And when she sings, it's going to be the end, because it's not over until the Mockingjay sings. And seeing as Katniss was the Mockingjay and she was the female tribute from District 12, I think Lucy Gray is going to be the Mockingjay in this book. So, yeah, I have no idea what exactly that is about and how everything is going to coincide, but I'm excited to find out, and I hope you are too. If you are, stick around, subscribe so you know when I'm live, or just watch my vlogs. I post them all to my channel. So, but thanks for joining me. See y'all around.